Hello, hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space. And a couple of cards using this layering stamp set from Simon Says Stamp. This is the Lots of Luck stamp set. This came out in their Splendor release, which was earlier this month in February. And yeah, I don't do a whole lot of layer stamping, even though there's a lot and I have a lot of them. I tend to avoid them. I don't know. I think the biggest issue I generally have is getting everything lined up and then it fitting on the die cut. And I'm always like annoyed, even though there's very simple solutions to it, which I'm going to show in the video. And I'll preface it by saying for the first little bit, I make it more difficult than it needs to be. And then my brain caught up and I was like, oh yeah, this is the proper way to do it. To make it easier to be able to do multiple, pieces at once. So I'll show that and explain it in the video. Is what it is. But yeah, I made a couple cards. They came together fairly quickly because that is the great thing about layered stamps is you don't have to do any coloring. Because I know a lot of people don't like to color, aren't comfortable coloring, that sort of a thing, which I totally get it. It's nice that we have options, whether it's layering stamps, coordinating stencils, or layering stencils, like standalone stencils. We got options now, which is awesome, and I love it. And now that I've played with this set and kind of reminded myself, I like layered stamps. I just need to use them and get out of my head. It's like, maybe I'll do this more often. So anywho, as always, links to everything I use will be in the description box below. They are affiliate links. I've got the disclaimer and all that below as well, but affiliate links, no cost to you. If you use my links and you place an order, I do get like a small commission that just adds up throughout the month and helps pay the bills, etc. And yeah, I'll have it all listed. I'll have a link to my blog post that'll have the photos, picture links, etc., etc. Always just expand the description box and 99% of the time it's all there. Every once in a while I forget something, but you can always let me know in the comments and then I'll find it and I'll fix it. So keep watching and I'll show you guys how I made these cards. Alrighty, so step one for making layering stamping a little easier. This isn't about the layering stamping, it's about being able to line them up with coordinating wafer dies. And to make that easier is to create just little templates. And I just grabbed a piece of cardstock from my stash. I personally think anything other than white cardstock is going to work because there's just contrast, which just makes it a little bit easier. And it doesn't have to be cardstock. You use copy paper as well, but cardstock makes it a little easier, especially when I do things the proper way a little bit later. But I just took some cardstock and cut it to just larger than the die cuts. So that way I'll have a little bit of margin, and then the whole plan too is to keep these. That's also where it comes in a little handier to have them as cardstock versus a lighter weight paper. So you want the negative portions. The actual die cuts themselves with this are basically useless. So I want all the negative portions. So I took those images, die cut them from just this pink cardstock, and then I have just a whole bunch of scraps of white cardstock that I plan on doing my stamping on. And again, I'm making it a little more difficult here. And then my brain caught up and I was like, "Durr." So I was using my outlines to just kind of line up the images, which for the first layer, for the most part, it's kind of irrelevant. But I started with the little grass image, and there's two layers to this. And I'm stamping it onto Simon's smooth white cardstock, and I'm using a variety of Pawsitively saturated inks, specifically for this first lighter shade of green. It's Sprout ink, and I'm stamping a whole bunch. I had a pretty rough idea when I started it, how many I would need. And then in the end, I kind of lucked out and had the perfect amount. I love when that happens. So again, so then the second layer of this kind of grassy piece, I'm kind of shaking my head at myself because I was like, this could have been so much easier. And it gets easier. And then I kept all this in because, sometimes it takes me a minute, or 20 minutes, however long it was, until my brain is like, hey, you do realize you know how to do this. So anyway, the second layer of these little grassy images, I did some with Fairway, which is the medium shade of green, and then some with Field. Just it gives a little bit of differentiation. And then there are two clover images in this set. There's a larger one and a smaller one. And for this larger one, again, my brain hadn't caught up yet. So same thing. I use my little template to kind of line it up more, so center it on these scraps of cardstock. And I'm using the same shades of green. So I started with the lightest green, which is the Sprout. And then using the medium shade, which is Fairway. Honestly, the little template, I do find doing it this way is a little bit easier. Things like stems, long, thinner little parts of stamps, stems or balloon strings, those sorts of things. Even if they're not layering images, having using your die cut and then using that as a guide to line up the stamp, because when you're working with photopolymer, especially if it's a long, skinny piece, it's so easy to get it wonky and not the way it's supposed to, which if you're just stamping it, whatever. But if you're going to die cut it, it can be annoying because it's trying to get it lined up. So having the negative piece of the die cut so you can line up that long, thin piece makes it so much easier. And I need to do that more often because I avoid that too. So anywho, my brain finally caught up and I was like, if you die cut all the scraps first and then stick the die cut in the negative piece, so then everything's already die cut. So then I won't have to go back now and line up the wafer die with all the images, which isn't difficult because I had everything, lined up. However, it's even less time to just throw the die down with a scrap of cardstock, die cut, die cut, die cut, die cut, a whole bunch at once. I don't have to worry about lining up or taping anything. And then you stick the die cut into the negative piece and then line up the stamps like I'm showing. This is how it's supposed to be done. This is so much easier. So my brain finally caught up and I was like, oh yeah, this is the thing that we do. So that's what I did. And this isn't this. My brain stopped, you guys. Someone can call it proper in the comments what this little floral image is. I knew it and I meant to look it up before I started doing the voiceover, but you guys have no idea the chaos going on behind the scenes. So anyway, it's pretty. And for this one, I pulled out an extra shade of ink because there's many layers to this one. The little floral part, there's actually 4 layers. So there's that solid piece, which took me a second to kind of get lined up. And that one I used Rainbow Splash Ballet ink. So just kind of a light, kind of peachy pink color, really. And then the other 3 layers, like the detail bits, I used, I started with Carnation. And that one I actually inked up twice because my Carnation ink pad, I think I need to re-ink it because I use that one a lot, and stamp that one. And with my little negative piece, I actually put just a little piece of washi tape. Everything kind of clings nicely because I have my Waffle Flower grip mat in my MISTI. But with, again, larger pieces, things like this, just putting a little piece of washi tape so the sticky side is facing up on the back of my negative die cut piece. It just gives enough of extra cling, really, for these die cut pieces. And then I just stick it in, stamp, stick it in, stamp, over and over and over again. And I've sped this up in editing, but it still didn't take very long. So for the little detail pieces, I used, Carnation and then Peony and then Rose Pawsitively saturated inks. And that was just the bloom part. And then there's the stem. And like I said, for things like this, just having that negative die cut helps to line up a long, thin piece like that, because they just don't want to go where they're supposed to go, So line that up. And then that one, same thing. I'm using the Sprout ink. And then there's a final little layer with this specific stamp. And it's just kind of like the little edges of the leaves. It just gives it that little extra something. So like I said, many layers with this one. Altogether, there's 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 6 pieces. So once things are lined up and doing this negative piece and the die cut, because again, I would normally just avoid using a stamp set like this because I generally either I can't be bothered or I just keep finding it like, oh, it's too difficult. You know, it's too much work. But then when you actually do it, and especially doing little tricks like this, it's like, oh, this is actually really fun. And they all came together, and I stamped a ton of all these little scraps of cardstock. So once once my brain had caught up doing my thing, and I was like, okay. And then it was just go time. So I got everything stamped. The smaller little clover image, I did the same thing, Sprout, Fairway, and then Field ink. Got all of those stamped. And then for there's a little ladybug in this set, which is so adorable. I have a thing for ladybugs. I don't know what it is. Who does not smile when you see a ladybug, honestly? So I did the same thing, had my little negative piece, my little die cut. Again, this is why I don't get rid of especially white cardstock scraps, because I use them. In fact, at this point, I'm pretty much out of scraps. But they always repopulate themselves, because, white cardstock's what I use the most of. So with the little ladybug, you stamped the little, I wanted to say outline, but none of these images have outlines, but it's the dots in the head of it with some black ink. And then for the actual body piece, I decided to just not use my MISTI at all, because it's just ridiculously simple to line up. And I was like, this will just be faster if I just use one of my acrylic blocks. You could totally use your MISTI and just keep doing like I was showing, but I just stuck it to an acrylic block, and I inked it up with Simon's Cherry Positively Saturated ink. And yeah, it was so simple to just line it up, stamp, line it up, stamp. And yeah, I did several little ladybugs because they're just ridiculously cute. So got all those stamped. And then for my backgrounds, I pulled out, first off, this is the Eclipse tape roll. I showed this in a recent live video. This is old. It's still available. I have a link to it in the supplies, but like this tape roll came out, goodness, almost 20 years ago now, and mine is nearly 20 years old. I've had it for forever, and it left the market for a while, and it came back on the market, and then I wasn't even sure if it was still available anymore. I came across it in my stash, and I was like, oh yeah, this stuff's amazing. So basically, it's like an entire roll of like Post-it tape. The whole thing's got that, a temporary stick to it. Love this stuff. Love it. So I took it, I cut the pieces as you could see, and I'm using Simon's Cloud Borders wafer die. You could use a cloud stencil. I've got many. When I was digging through my stash, I had these wafer dies, and I was like, ooh, yeah. And then I was like, I don't want to add more like layers of die cuts to my background. But then I was like, ooh, if I use the Eclipse tape roll, I can just make my own like cloud masks. So that's what I did. So I die cut 3 pieces with the 3 different Cloud Borders wafer die and created 3 cloud masks. Now, like I said, you could use a stencil. You could also just die cut like copy paper or even some cardstock. But the nice thing with this is because it's got the stick, it just makes life easier. So I die cut those layers, and then I have just a couple panels of the same smooth white cardstock. This is an A2 sized panel. And I'm going to blend Simon's Seafoam Positively Saturated ink, one of my favorites. And I ink up my brush, and I start immediately on the actual Eclipse like masking paper. And then I, drag the color off. And again, this is sped up, and I'm going to speed it up even more. But this was just simple. I start at the top, work my way down. That's it. And I kind of move these little cloud shapes around a little bit too, because they're long enough that I don't get the exact same edges, if that makes sense. And yeah, I haven't done this in a while. I used to do this all the time, like little cloud, creating scenes and all those things. So this was fun. I really enjoyed it. I was like, I haven't done layered stamping in a while. I haven't done like cloud backgrounds in a while. And then I was like, ooh, this is so fun. I need to do these more. So I worked my way towards the bottom. And then at the very bottom, I just used that Sprout ink and just lightly blended that just to kind of ground everything when I adhere all my little images. And then I just repeated the process. And with like creating like kind of masks basically like this, you can technically keep them and like reuse them up until they're saturated. And with these ones I did, you can kind of see, but you can tell when you flip them over. And once they become saturated, you'll notice when they're done for, because they won't mask so much as like the ink will start actually seeping directly through it. So these ones were kind of done for, but depending on the material you're using or the inks or how much they're used, usually you can get like quite a few uses out of them. So yeah, I got these backgrounds. I might get a couple more uses out of them before they're just completely done for. And yeah, but again, that Eclipse tape roll, I don't even know how many feet. It'll be on the listing. It's listed and linked in the description box below, but I've had my roll for forever, but I also didn't use it for many years because I forgot I had it. And now it's sitting back on my desk and I was like, oh yeah, this is the good stuff. So anyway, I made little piles of all of my like die cut pieces. So I knew, I had an even amount to do 2 full card fronts and then of course extra pieces for the inside because you got to have something for the inside. And then I kind of did a rough layout there. This is another reason why I like doing more than one card at a time because I'll use one as basically my template. So that's what I did. I kind of laid out the one on the left, figure out roughly where I wanted it. And then on the right, I just now actually commit and start adhering everything. So for the little florals and the clover pieces, I'm just using some of Simon's Big Mama foam tape. And then I'm also going to use some foam squares, just give things different little heights, different bits of dimension. The stems of everything, I'm just leaving. Those will get kind of pressed down when I adhere the grassy pieces along the bottom. So I just didn't bother adding anything to those. I just stuck adhesive behind the main attraction, basically. So once I was, happy with my, layout, tucking everything in here, then I'll adhere those grassy pieces along the bottom. And those I just adhered with craft tacky glue. Didn't pop those up at all because one, they'll like kind of press down the little stem pieces and also won't create like a whole ton of like extra bulk. So I'm just going to adhere those. I let little bits here and there just hang over the edges a little bit because I had trimmed those backgrounds down a little earlier there. So these backgrounds are now roughly like 4 inches by 5 1/4. So just slightly smaller than an A2 card base because the card base will like frame it up nicely. So got those adhered and then I just repeated the process on the second card front. And then of course I'm going to add splatter because that's what we do here. So I'm using the Picket Fence Studios Paper Splatter Watercolor Liquid White Snowflake. Again, say that 3 times fast. This, I've mentioned this before. Gives the same sort of look as using like the Ranger Perfect Pearl Powder, which I've shown in a bajillion videos. So shake it up, stuck some on my glasswork surface. I use my little fan brush and then just splatter this all over the background. And I like this because it gives, that little bit of shimmer. It gives me the splatter that I love, but it's not, it doesn't overtake everything. It's not stark white. It's not black splatter that I love as well. It just gives that little extra shimmery goodness. So I set those backgrounds aside to dry, grabbed another scrap of cardstock from my stash, and I'm stamping one of the sentiments from this set. And I use my anti-static powder tool first. This just keeps the embossing powder from clinging to anything other than the stamped sentiments. And then I stamped the sentiment from the set with just Altenews Obsidian pigment ink. And then I'm coating it with clear embossing powder. Tapped off the excess. I'll melt this with my heat tool. So then the sentiment will have a bit of shine to it. Well, it just gives it that little extra something. And then there is a coordinating wafer die for the main sentiments in this set. So I die cut that. And then I also die cut more of the scraps with that same wafer die, and then I'm stacking those together with craft tacky glue. So that'll give this a little bit extra dimension. It kind of almost makes it like chipboardy looking. So stacking those together with the craft tacky glue, because as Laura Basson always says, dimension is life. So got those together. And then for my card bases, like I said, they're going to be A2 cards. So 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch top fold white note cards. And I've got my little die cut pieces that I'm going to stick on the insides as well. And another sentiment from that set. And this I'm stamping onto the inside with that same obsidian ink. And then I'm going to adhere these little die cut pieces to just kind of the edge of this card front. I had originally kind of arranged them. They looked really cute, like in the center of the card. But I was like, one, that's actually just a card front on its own. And two, I was like, it takes up like the entire inside of the card. So moved it off to the side a little bit, just, so it's all there, but it's not taking over the entire inside of the card. So got those adhered, and then I'll just flip this over and trim off the bits that are hanging over the edges of the card base here. So just using the card base itself as my guide to trim these off, and then again repeat the process with the second card. And then I'm going to adhere my card fronts to my card bases, again with just some craft tacky glue, get those popped into place. And that was why I trimmed down the card front, because the card base just frames it a little bit, gives it a little extra, something. So got those adhered into place. And then the sentiments I'm going to adhere with craft tacky glue as well, because they're already stacked together, so they don't need any like foam tape or anything like that. And then my little ladybugs I'm gonna pop up with just little thin foam squares, and I almost wish I'd like stamped and die cut more of them because they're so cute. Just let them take over, let them take over the card. Why not? But 2 was enough, and then I had tucked that third one on the inside of each card just cuz. So pop those into place, and then as a final little bit of embellishment, because I don't even bother putting these away lately because they're my other fixation among other things. And trust me, I did think about putting baker's twine on this card. Yeah, if I had planned ahead a bit more, I would have wrapped baker's twine around before adhering the center grass piece. That's if that makes any sense at all. But I decided to skip it, but I did think about it. You guys know. It's what I do. But anyway, didn't add baker's twine, but I did add bling. And this is the sparkling clear confetti. That, yeah, just goes with everything. So I tucked a few of them here and there throughout the background. I've talked about this before with like confetti or like big sequins, things like that. I don't know what it is, but I really like partially tucking them under images. I don't know. I just like the look of that. So that's what I did. I stuck a few here and there. I'm just going to adhere them into place with little dabs of craft tacky glue, kind of figuring out my layout. Once I'm happy with it on the first card, I just copy that on the second card. And then all I got to do is let the glue dry, and these cards are complete. So like I mentioned in the intro, I will have a supply list with links to everything I used in the description box below the video. I will also have a link to my website on there. It's a direct link, so it takes you to the post for these cards. I'll have the photos of these cards, picture links to everything, so you can check all that info out below if you're interested. There you can see the shine of all of that splatter, but it's not, it's only when the light hits it. That's why I like it. It's not as in your face. And I say that well aware that the next card I do is probably going to have like 5 different kinds of splatter. And it's fun. Anywho, links to all the things are in the description box below the video. Thank you all so very much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping and commenting. I very much appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you. And I'll see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.